Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Redmen Originals Podcast with me, Paul Machin. I am joined by Dan Clubb and returning prodigal son, Mr. Ben Kelly, as well.
Thanks very much. What an intro. Let's not disappoint over the next hour. Jeez. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and let's hope it doesn't go beyond an hour, otherwise then we're in big trouble. You give yourself a get out of jail free card there. The lads are with me. It is a reduced cast because people are jetting around the country recovering from all kinds of exertions over the summer and what have you. Before we delve into the content, we're going to be discussing, obviously, the double header. We're going to be discussing Rio Ngumoha because Dan demanded it, and plenty more besides, including transfers, more Isak stuff. But we are partnered for the season. I am very, very proud to say we are partnered with oosh.co.uk. And to kick things off, right now we're actually running a competition with them to win 2 tickets to the Community Shield. Head over to our Instagram to check out that one. But they are also giving away an Audi RS6 for free. It's mad. I'm very, very, very pleased to be a part of this. There is a little video involving us and the gang, which will be going out on socials later. But if you click the link in the description underneath, or you scan the QR code on screen, it's going to take you through to this page right here. Yeah, this is the RS6. It's real. We've seen it. We've lent against it. We felt very, very cool. It is there. Yeah, head to oosh.co.uk, get a ticket and get in there for free. Wild stuff, absolutely wild. And yeah, loads more to come from us and them throughout the season on YouTube as well. Right, gentlemen, let's talk football. Ben, did you watch the games, presumably? Did you go to the ground?
I did. I was there. I was in the Cop yesterday, and it was firstly just really nice atmosphere. Those pre-season games always are, aren't they? But it's a few years since I've been to one. Loads of kids in the Cop, kind of taking that opportunity to go and sit somewhere that maybe they wouldn't usually sit. The 2 games back to back, I thought worked quite well. They'd obviously had a word with Arna, play the stronger team second, because the ground was a lot more full than I thought it might have been, particularly if the squads had been the other way around. But yeah, a nice day, and obviously some really good performances as well, which we're going to talk about.
I thought it was interesting, Dan, that clearly a decision was made for logistics, right? Mm-hmm. And because we were debating whether you were going to do a reaction video, and in my head I thought the stronger game would be first, but then I thought, well, hang on, no, as Ben said, they clearly went, well, you've got the problem of like the warm-up act or the main act. No one's missing the main act, so you want everyone in the ground for that. But also, I don't think they kind of realised that, or a lot of people who went, that it got cold as the day wore on, and that was a very, very empty ground by the time we got to the final 15 minutes of the second game.
Yeah, I made note of that during, to be honest with you, because as you say, the final 10-15, Upper Annie was empty, more or less, by that point. And I wonder how empty it would have been had, again, the squads had been reversed, because the main lads were out on the pitch. They were strutting the stuff, and yet still people saw fit to make the way home, because it was quite cold, it was quite late, and it had been a relatively long night at the footy by that point as well, hadn't it? I mean, people arriving, because Anfield was absolutely packed like it normally is on a match day, sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went down to the Mural and stuff like that beforehand, and it was chocker. So by the time 9, half 9, almost 10 o'clock comes around, you're probably ready by that point.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. You're right, it's a long old day to be at Anfield. That, I mean, you left your snacks in the car, didn't you? So how did you get on?
Emergency snacks. You know what? The fair dues to the staff, they sorted me out. They were all right. Yeah, I was boxed. I mean,
it's not like you're hypoglycemic or anything like that, but it's like you just need
a very
food.
hungry individual. Yeah,
just a hungry man.
I was a hungry man. I'm a big lad, so I need feeding. But I was boxed off. Yeah, thanks to somebody very kind at the club.
Excellent. Okay, Sal. Let's begin then. Game 1. It was an interesting one, Ben, because your eyes are drawn to. It's it's like Woodman in goal, and there's a lot of younger players in there. But there were some decent first team players involved, of course. But it would be stupid of us not to discuss Rio Ngumoha, who I think has actually made himself probably the biggest talking point of pre-season in some regards. Because I wrote something there a couple of days ago about how he wasn't really on my radar. I'd kind of almost forgotten about him. I was thinking about training Yanni going into this summer, but Rio's come in, and we've seen a lot of young players over the years in pre-seasons kind of look all right, show okay. it's been a longer while since I can remember someone coming in at 16 and looking quite that good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny how pre-seasons also, like, they tend to evolve as the pre-seasons go on. You know, those very, very early games are like, yeah, we're going to throw in quite a few of the young players. Yeah. Maybe there's been an international tournament. Maybe some players aren't quite back and ready to go yet. So it's quite nice for some of those players to get those minutes. And then you can very much see as the summer goes on, which of the younger players maybe the manager's looking at a little bit more seriously, and that's normally for one or two reasons. Yeah. It's normally either to put them in the shop window, which I think is the case for some players that played yesterday, or they think they're an option. And I think actually Rio Ngumoha, you know, particularly after the Yokohama game, where I think that talk about him clearly just went up another level when he came on and just changed everything, and that's all anybody was talking about afterwards. I think the more and more that I see of him, and the more and more that he plays, I'm of the opinion that Arne Slot thinks that I've got £80 million or whatever he got for Luis Diaz, and I don't necessarily need at the moment to bring in a new left winger, because I've got a player here who can make up some of the minutes this season, and he's that exciting at 16.
I tend to agree, and I didn't think I would, and I know we do this a lot of time of getting overhyped about things. But as I say, I've seen debuts, I've seen young players, you know, and what you're looking for, some good touches and a couple of moments here and there to go, oh, well, you can see the sort of shoots of what they could become. He played like a first team player, and Ben's right, you know, to come into the Yokohama game, get the goal, you know, as well. And he's just, he's playing like a senior player, trying to play for a place in the senior squad.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything both of you just said there. He's definitely playing well beyond his years. And what I would say as a starter really is his development's been astronomical since you've had the football club. I've been lucky enough. A lot of people are sort of getting the first proper looks at him now. I watched him 18s, 21s, and now sort of into the first team. And he is a frightening talent. Like, what a boy, what a player. There's no two ways about that. It's interesting. With one breath, I'm absolutely on the hype train, and yeah, he's ready. Let's just run with it because he's clearly good enough, and therefore he's old enough. So yeah, let's see what that looks like. And as you mentioned, could he just sort of take some of the Diaz minutes? Possibly, perhaps. He looks ready, he looks like a viable option for that. Then the next breath I go, oh, 16. Like, we've got to be really careful here. Not just in terms of like whether he's ready or not, but just in terms of like his own development and how we best treating him, like kid gloves, you know what I mean? Because Liverpool will be very, very acutely aware of how best to handle someone like that. They are very on top of any noise around any youngster, really, and controlling the narrative and not letting it get to them and keeping the feet on the ground and all that. And that's not to say that Rio Ngumoha is the type of character that would get carried away or believe his own hype or anything of that imagination, because I don't believe that to be true. But yeah, just from watching him and the way he's sort of, as I say, come on leaps and bounds in the short time he's been at the football club, it has been a joy to behold. Like, he is frighteningly good.
He's improved through pre-season, Ben, and the last player I can remember being like this was Bajcetic when he came into the side. So I remember him coming in the League Cup game against Man City just after Christmas anyway. It was around that time after the World Cup, and it was fine. Yeah. He was fine, held his own, gets subbed off, and you go, okay, cool, solid. And then every game he played, you saw more and more of his skill set and his abilities. And that's the thing for me with Ngumoha, is that he just doesn't seem afraid. And I think the best young players have got that. But actually, Doak's got a bit of that as well, to be fair, and it's an interesting comparison. But like, Michael Owen had a bit of that as well, of just like, I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to show what I can do, not afraid to take people on, not afraid to get it wrong. And actually, the more he tried it, the more things he started to get right, and not in a blind alley, I've dribbled past three men, cool, what was your end product? He's got end product. We got a goal and assist at the weekend. Yeah,
absolutely. It's that fearlessness that makes these players so exciting, and in the nicest way, sometimes like that little bit of naivety as well. That maybe some, you know, if you're a player that is a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, maybe you think, oh, I'm not going to do that because it's probably not going to come off, you know, play. But when you kind of are just sort of growing into the game, and you feel like you can take on the world, you know, that's sometimes you can. Sometimes it is that simple. And
you only get that once.
No, exactly.
And I think that at times we've kind of wasted that, because you do drip feed lads in, and then you only really get one opportunity, I think, to burst onto the scene, and it might be interesting to see what they do with them.
Yeah, it is. But also on the flip side, to sort of go back to what Dan was saying, like, the difference between maybe Ngumoha and, say, a Raheem Sterling or a Michael Owen is that like, we've got a squad that's so good and a team that's so good. We're not relying on this shining light to come in and potentially save us. You know, I remember, like, Sterling was so exciting when he came in. And I remember actually watching Sterling when I was maybe 10 or 11. I got free tickets through school to go and watch, like, the under-17s, Champions League, whatever. And they opened the Cop and went to it. And Sterling was man of the match that night. And then a couple of years later, there he was with Brendan Rodgers. But that's what Rodgers needed at that time. Because, yes, he had Suarez. This is obviously before Sturridge had arrived. But he needed somebody else to be able to throw into the mix because the squad wasn't good enough. But now we can take it at our own pace. We can go, look, this kid's good enough for maybe, you know, the cliche would be a few League Cup games, a few dead rubber Champions League games or whatever. We can do that if we want. Or if we really feel like he's good enough, we can go in. But there's no pressure on the manager or on the player to be more than he needs to be. We can be as patient as we want with him, which I think is going to be a big benefit.
I think how the rest of the transfer window goes will impact this significantly, of course, and what else Liverpool choose to bring in and who else they choose to go out. Because obviously it's positionally dependent, but it feels to me like he might be ahead of like Chiesa in the pecking order at this point, you know, because I think there's a really definable skill set that he's bringing that you can understand. You can wrap your head around what he could do in a Liverpool side over there. Maybe again I'm getting a little bit carried away, and you know, if Liverpool were to bring in Isak, then that would obviously change the complexion of the layout. But then if Chiesa was to go, that would certainly open another little door for him as well. So time will tell. But yeah, people watching and listening at home, let us know what your thoughts are on Ngumoha, because it's hard. Be excited. There's no reason not to be excited, because we've clearly got a very, very talented footballer there, and he is in that sweet spot age where we don't even need to worry about putting him out on loan. He can actually, another season between the under-21s and the first team is not going to do him any particular harm. One player probably most wouldn't necessarily pick out for discussion, but I just wanted to talk about Lucas Stevenson, Dan, because I think he's a great example of almost what I was talking about before, where I've been really impressed by him, really impressed. He played centre half in that opening game against Preston. He's played right back. He's played a little further forward as well. I know you were talking about him a few weeks ago on here about how he played centre mid, attacking mid for Dundee on loan. It's a bit of a pity for him, because in another era, we'd be coming out and go, wow, look at this kid. He can play right back. He can play right mid. He might do little bits and pieces for us. He did have a little error toward the end, with conceding the goal. But I was more impressed by him than again I expected to be going into pre-season. Yeah,
I'm with you in equal measure, really. I think he's had a good time of it. Actually, I think he's all effort and all commitment all the time, and he's got quality to boot. So yeah, he had a really, really good year on loan last season, actually up at Dundee, and a lot of the reports are very glowing about him. There's been murmurings about, I think, a return to Scotland. I think Aberdeen are at the table for him right now, which is no huge shock. Obviously, more in the upper echelons of the Scottish Premiership, it's fair to say. He's clearly caught the eye up there. So yeah, I've been equally impressed. I think he's had a good little pre-season. The versatility is definitely one thing that sort of stands him in good stead and in his favour, it's fair to say. But I just think, as you say, the competition for places in the positions that he occupies just doesn't mean he's got any chance of a look in, I don't think, really, which is a shame, because, again, as you rightly say, I think in different seasons, different eras of Liverpool, you look at this as a real opportunity and a real one to sort of emerge from the ether a little bit and have a chance. But I think Luca, probably another loan, a pretty best outcome for him, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. The one last player from that game, first game in particular, I want to discuss, maybe Darwin's worth a mention as well, but Harvey Elliott, Ben, how, I don't know whether this came across in the ground, but on the television coverage, he looked quite emotional, clapping the cop as he was walking off the pitch. It does make you wonder whether this might have been maybe a farewell from Harvey Elliott.
Maybe, but we saw a bit of that against Palace at the end of last season too, and obviously it hasn't quite materialised yet. You don't really know what's going on in the background, but I think what's interesting about Elliott is sort of the words from him over on the tour and things like that were more about maybe this is going to be more his decision to go, which I think is probably fair enough. And sometimes you've got to be a big brave boy to go and make that decision for yourself. As much as you love the club and as much as this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, if he really thinks he can get in that World Cup team next year, probably not going to do that at Liverpool, probably. And that's not to say that he's not good enough to do that, but when you kind of then look at maybe even the likes of Ngumoha, and when he in terms of when you look at Elliott playing out wide and just how more explosive other players can be in those positions. And then, again, like we talked about with Stevenson, the midfield positions, there's so much competition. I mean, I thought Dominic Szoboszlai was fantastic in the second game yesterday. And he's a player that, even though he's been such an established part of the first team for a long time, Vert's coming in, everybody was like, well, what happens to Dom now? Well, there's your answer. He now plays deeper, I think. Like, that's clearly he's going to be an option there. So there's just another name that's going to be ahead of somebody like Harvey Elliott on the team sheet still. So I think it's going to be tough, but it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up at a good Premier League club, because I think that's his level.
I totally agree. I think, again, I've said it plenty of times, I think Harvey Elliott is a terrific footballer, but his pathway to first team football hasn't gotten clearer than what Liverpool have done so far. And as Ben rightly says, there's Dominic Szoboszlai was a mainstay of the team last year. And there are still question marks. That's worth mentioning. I agree. I thought he was brilliant in a deep role at the weekend. But he's there. They're all fighting for these kind of places. They all want to play there. Everyone wants to play the 10. I could see it. I could see a world. He's a similar sort of build, and he's scrappy in the way that Vert can be as well. That you could conceivably have him be in that package, but it just becomes where you spread the minutes. We've got if now Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Jones are fighting for two places effectively, then it gets harder and harder.
And nobody's more aware of that than Harvey Elliott. I was lucky enough to grab a couple of minutes with him after one of the matches out on the tour, and I barely had to ask him the question. And he was answering basically about his future and saying he needs to be selfish, as Ben alludes to a moment ago. He is very much aware of the pecking order and the fact that he didn't play enough minutes, in his opinion, last season. That only got more complicated this season by the arrival of Florian Wirtz, obviously. So, I love Harvey Elliott. Nobody is more committed to the cause than him when he puts on Liverpool shirt. He absolutely embodies everything it is to represent us on the pitch. He is that fan on the pitch. But unfortunately for him, especially in a World Cup year, because he's off the back of player of the tournament from the 21s Euro, so he will look at that as the springboard, and that's me. I've accomplished under 21s footy now. I need to get into the senior recognition. He's not likely to do that at Liverpool. He probably does need to move on.
And there's always those like 3 places in the World Cup squad that are kind of up for grabs. The 26-man squad. Who's player 23, 4, 5 and 6, and that's what he'll be looking at the moment. Who are those 3 or 4 players that you can go, if I just get a real good run of form together, particularly post Christmas, Tuchel just goes, go on then. And even if he doesn't get much minutes, at least he's been then, he's part of the senior setup.
He's perfect for that role as well, because we've seen at Liverpool how much of an X factor he can be from the bench. Not necessarily always starting games, you know what I mean? He's come on and impacted games time and time again. And if that is the sort of player that England are looking at in terms of who we're going to turn to, who can be that guy to spot something, to make something happen, Harvey's got previous in that. So I think it's a fair point.
It's one of those, isn't it, where like James Maddison just picked up an injury, and that could be a thing that like affects his whole season and therefore puts him in doubt for the World Cup, as much as he's got to be a long time to recover from here. But they're the kind of things that kind of happen that get you on the plane. He'd be looking at that happening to Liverpool for him to get the opportunities to put himself in the in the spotlight, to get himself on the plane. Whereas you could go to any number of Premier League or Bundesliga clubs, maybe other countries as well, get minutes, and
it does feel like now going abroad doesn't burden you from an England perspective.
It's not Owen Hargreaves.
Exactly.
It's this mystery Owen Hargreaves.
It's almost like actually it's the opposite. The benefit of it, and as you just alluded to, Tottenham may well now be looking for a creative central midfielder.
Didn't get Gibbs White, did they either? So.
No, as difficult as obviously that is for James Maddison, who's a good player, but now there's a gap in their squad, and the transfer window's still open. So
Absolutely. Let's move on to the second game.
You mentioned Ben Doak and Jayden Danns. Sure. I think it's really good to see Jayden Danns back playing footy.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think that's a real positive.
Got a reception as well, didn't he?
He did. Massive. He's got his Anfield record's as good as most, isn't it? Let's be honest, 2 games, 3 goals. So nice to see him back. I do want to touch on Ben Doak just very briefly, if you don't mind, because I'm a big admirer of Ben Doak, because I've been chief chairman of his fan club for the longest possible time, and anyone who listen, I often praise him. But I think, considering this may be a shop window, you said before the couple, this may be a shop window thing for Ben, but I've just got this sneaky suspicion that Arne Slot's a big admirer. I don't know what it is. I just got this feeling that he really likes him, because if you look at Rio on the other side, I know Ben's 2 or 3 years older, but he's very similar in terms of very direct, very quick. The end product's always been a question mark when it comes to Ben, but I think we've seen that improve in recent times as well. It all depends on like Chiesa again in terms of the makeup of the attacking department. But if Chiesa was to go, I do honestly think there's a world whereby Ben just sticks around as part of that.
In my head, as I've been trying to figure out how Slot constructs his squad for the season, I have it that I think it's one or the other. I think that's how the cutthroat nature of building a first team squad, where it's probably either Ngumoha or Doak, and I'm not dead set one of that. I thought it was interesting that he actually. There was a moment in the game when I was thinking he could really do with doing something here because Ngumoha's stealing the show, and then he gets involved, and does really well for one of the goals. So his issue is that he's probably a saleable asset, or is a loanable asset if nothing else. And he probably now needs to go and have a season. He's at that age where a full season of footy would benefit him. And I just wonder what we've seen. Like Bobby Clark moving on, it looks like injuries have really taken a toll on Bajcetic. It doesn't look like it might ever be his time at Liverpool. And Ben Doak might just be on the cusp of falling into that. I'd love to see him get a go with us. I really would. But yeah.
I think a Premier League goal loan would be really useful for him. I think we've seen lots of players. I mean, look, Harvey Elliott benefited massively from a Championship loan, but I think the real difference can be seen in whether if you loan him to the likes of a Wolves or a West Ham, who granted might have mixed seasons. That's always the risk with those types of loans. But can they make a difference in those type of sides? I think that's with his pace and his raw kind of energy.
He needs to stay fit as well. But it's funny how I had my hipster artistic sister-in-law around watching. I had the game on and she was going like. I was explaining what Rio Ngumoha was all about. Why he looks really young. He's 16, and then the one I explained the concept of. To the direct quote of going to the Championship to play with hairy-arsed men, which was a funny thing to use to somebody who's worked for the Natural History Department of the BBC. But I don't think Doak needs that. I think you're right. I think he needs to go and play at a really good level and be allowed to shine. Whereas Harvey, I think, really benefited from with the physical side. Doak, I just have no doubt about Doak's physicality.
Well, he's done it. He went and Middlesbrough fans love him, so he's passed that test. So if you're going to loan him again, every loan has to make sense. Yeah. So it has to be something that now is a different type of challenge for him. So let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Okay, then game 2, the one where the big boys came out to play. Really good, really strong team selection. We've sort of touched upon it before, but just briefly on the Szoboszlai thing. The more I see him play in a deeper midfield role, the more I think I understand Dominic Szoboszlai as a footballer. And it's weird to say that because obviously he's had some real highlights in his career so far for us, Ben. But there's never really been, apart from that initial couple of months after he signed, and I remember being on TNT saying he was carved out of marble by the gods or whatever, which is still true. Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe it's a positional thing. Maybe it's like the how he's being used or whatever. But he just never felt like a 10 for us. He does feel like his skill set does suit a little bit deeper. No,
and look, I think that's exactly it. He's not necessarily going to be that guy that we're all thinking that Wirtz is going to be in terms of the goals and the assists. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Wirtz, but he was just absolute silk on the ball. He's just something totally different to what Szoboszlai is. But potentially, what you've made kind of accidentally on purpose by playing him there for a year is a deep lying midfielder who is also very intelligent in terms of like knowing when to actually make that extra run to break forward from deep. He did it quite early in the Yokohama game where he just kind of appeared in the penalty area from nowhere. And he now, having done a year of playing in that 10 and in that role, which by the way, if Wirtz ever picks up any injuries, he'll obviously slot back in there, no qualms. But he's now done a year of that knowing and has that intelligence behind him. It actually, not just his work rate and his breaking up and his passing ability in the deep midfield alongside a Gravenberch or a McAllister, but actually maybe that extra element to his game is in the right scenario, he can be another attacking body as well, which I think maybe with like McAllister, I don't think does it in quite the same way.
McAllister did the opposite because McAllister did a season at 6 and then got moved further forward and became the perfect go-between those two. And Szoboszlai is almost the other side of that midfield in some regard.
But there's something about some of those kind of breaking between the lines runs that Szoboszlai can make that actually I think You know, if you think about that first season under Klopp when it was doing a 4-3-3, and I don't know, it didn't quite. It started off really well and then it kind of fizzled out. Actually, now has having that season as basically totally attacking minded, is that going to help him know when to stay and when to go to make him a brilliant all-round box-to-box midfielder? You know, I'm hoping so.
Recovery pace as well. I saw that a couple of times.
And willingness.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really impressed with him again last night, to be honest with you. And as Ben alluded to there, I do think it will have benefited him, that sort of added versatility and added dimension to his game, because it's interesting how we all praised Dominic Szoboszlai for lots of elements and lots of things that he did last season, but Arne Slot hammered home once or twice the need to get more from that position, and whoever's playing that role. So it always felt like he wasn't completely in love with Dom Szoboszlai at the 10. So it makes sense now that we've gone into the window and done what we've done and brought in Vert, the ideal 10 in many senses. And that doesn't mean the end for Dom Szoboszlai, it just means a different Dom Szoboszlai. And I think we're seeing it in its fullest form already, because a lot about the way he plays now makes sense in that deeper role. Because whilst he hasn't quite got the guile and the ability in tight spaces to be that perfect option further forward, a little bit deeper where we can see the game a little bit more, we can use the energy, you can use the running power, as you mentioned there, just seems to make perfect sense.
No, I agree. We saw it right at the end of the season. I can't remember what game it was now, but I remember thinking, okay, that was an interesting little hint at what we might see, and see more and more of that. And I'm pleased with that.
It's funny, isn't it, already, like, you know, when Verts came in, that the mere suggestion that this, as you say, might be the end, because my God, there's a lot of football to be played. And it's like, you know, just because McAllister and Gravenberch were the two in those midfield all the season, you know, a successful season for Liverpool this season looks like playing 60 games, probably. Yeah. So trust me, there's enough minutes available for everybody, for, you know, McAllister, for Szoboszlai, and for Gravenberch, and whoever else, Curtis Jones as well, to all feel like they've had a fair slice of the pie in those two positions.
And it's also worth pointing out, you know, we know Slot has been a student of Klopp, but he's also a student of Guardiola as well. And like, I used to watch those Man City midfields and actually front threes, and you never knew who was playing where, because Foden could play left, right, he could play centre forward, he could play in the 10, you could put him in one of the attacking midfield slots if you needed to be. Bernardo Silva, another great example of that. Gundogan, is he playing the 6, or is he playing at an 8, or is he playing at 10, and so on and so forth. Go through so many of their players, and that seems to be how we're constructing what we're doing. Because again, everyone's dead set on this, Vert is a 10, but Slot even referenced the other day he can play the left. So don't be shocked to see him. There'll be games, because it's certainly what he was doing for Leverkusen. You know, he played in a 2 up top, he played off the left in a front 3, and he played in a 10 behind a striker as well. So yeah, the more versatility you'd hope will certainly suit our ways of breaking teams down next season. Salah, Dan. I mean, obviously, Salah being Salah, he could have done with scoring that pen. You know, absolute nonchalance from him just to step up and just like tow it over the bar. Got to do it for the fans, Mo. But I really enjoyed him just arriving in a situation and being like, can I shoot? You know, like flow diagram. No. Okay. Can I pass? Yes. Who can I pass to? And then it just opens up to a range of like 4 or 5 guys who are all making crazy runs into dangerous situations. I feel like, yeah, you know, I don't think we're going to need the raw running power Mo Salah anymore, but actually the creative, guileful one, which he's always been. We might see that come to the fore even more.
Yeah, I think that was pretty evident on the basis of last night as well. I think the captain's armband suited him as well, for what it's worth. But no, I think you're right. I think that range of passing and that just new evolution of Mo and that ability where things just seem to slow down around him. He just assesses his options, as you touched upon there, and he picks the right one 99 times out of 100, doesn't he? I think he's going to get his goals. Of course he's going to get his goals. That's Mo Salah, and that will never, ever relent, really. But I do think we're going to continue to see, and again, with the runners he's got around him, with the movement he's got around him, Florian Wirtz, the interchanging with him and how he links up there, that'll be a fascinating watch. I think we saw glimpses of it last night. There was times whereby the entire team, there was recognisable patterns along the way, but they weren't always on the same wavelength. They're still trying to understand how each other moves and what have you. But yeah, I think Salah with whether it be Ekitike or Gakpo or whoever else we're bringing into the fray, that is going to be a really, really intriguing watch, because this, again, the ability he's now found to just pick passes and get them is just phenomenal. I've not seen much like it, because he was nowhere near that footballer. He was a brilliant footballer, but he was just all goals, all action, all pace, all running, goals. And now all of a sudden he is this creator in chief. It's just a marvel.
So after the game had finished, I went about me day, but LFC TV stayed on, and then I think they showed like it was a goal rush of all Salah's goals. And it was lovely going back to the start, but you kind of realise that first half season, obviously Coutinho's there, and you're watching Coutinho picking up pockets of space and driving with it, and then he's got Salah as a runner and what have you. It won't be exactly the same as that, but with Vert added into the mix of what we've got as well, and Gakpo and Ekitike potentially Isak. Christ, let's stop the table from tipping over. That's the last time we had a front four almost in that regard, and Salah's now the elder statesman of it. He'll be the one who just gets to play the game the way that he wants to play it, with all these young bucks racing around doing all his running for him. Yeah, it's quite exciting. Ekitike, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, obviously played 45 minutes, first half in Japan, didn't he?
Yes.
And, I think the pitch was largely to blame for lots of things that day. So, it was very difficult to sort of get any kind of scope on him. But I thought yesterday, it looked really exciting. Obviously the goal he creates effectively, where he holds his run, he stays on side, and then he beats a man and pulls a shot across. That's all you're asking for, really, from your centre forward. It's not get the ball into an area where something might happen.
Yeah.
Get to the byline, pull it back. I thought that overall, it's only glimpses at this point. I'd be really interested to see what he does next Sunday slot. Is he? Well, it depends where the Isak's saga's up to, but I would assume that he's going to start Ekitike because he's spent a lot of money on him. He's going to come in, but I think we're all kind of almost expecting this for some reason, this bedding in period, particularly for Ekitike. It's like with Vert, it's like, well, he's just going to come in and grit that. That's the assumption with Vert. But with Ekitike, it's like, well, we might not see the best of him for a few months, but why not? Like, he's young, he's energetic, he's like, he's obviously got a lot to give.
But isn't that kind of good in the same regard? I think something about Vert stuff is almost like he's an umbrella for every other signing that we've made this summer, because he's the one who costs the big money, and Ekitike, it's massive money. There should be loads and loads and loads of pressure on him, and that will come, and it's something I will do the week, but there's outside forces that will try to make that happen, Dan. You'll see that on social media accounts. People, Manx on Instagram will be desperate to tell you how many shots he misses and all that kind of shite. But one thing I can tell from it's a very small sample range of seeing him. If you're comparing him and Darwin, I will be a little sad in some regards not to see how Darwin Núñez could perform in a team with creative Salah, Florian Wirtz and Gakpo around him, a really big, presence full, creative attack. I feel like he could score goals. And maybe Isak will give, if he comes, could show us a bit more of that traditional number 90 stuff. But when you compare the outside of the box stuff, already Ekitike looks very comfortable being on the football outside of the box, and as opposed to Darwin, who I always feel like doesn't have a fucking clue what's going to happen next, and he knows he's a good footballer and he'll kick it in that direction, he'll do this and that, but I've described in the past as he's a big kicks kind of player. Big powerful kicks in broad areas is what Darwin's good at, whereas Ekitike feels a more nuanced footballer.
I agree, and I think comfortable, the word used there, is absolutely the word, and it's also like a want and a desire to want to do that sort of stuff as well. I felt like Darwin, we always wanted to be on the shoulder, often gone from the shoulder and offside, to come back to your point a moment ago. But I think Ekitike,
it's like everyone feels like, what?
Yeah, he's onside.
Looking at the linesman, but okay, cool.
It's fair point as well about how he's come in, not under the radar. That's too extreme, but like there hasn't quite been the same level of fanfare that you expect from a £80 million worth of striker. You know what I mean? But that's because of maybe Florian Wirtz. But it feels like he has just kind of arrived. Now he plays for us, and on we go. And I'm more comfortable with that as well. And I think that will help him in the long. But you're right to reference what may well happen if he goes. God forbid he goes 007. But yeah, let's wait and see. But yeah, I was really impressed with Maxi for some nice little touches, lovely little layoffs, some nice little interchanges with those around him. But again, for me, I'll come back to it. I think it's just how easy he looks with dropping deep, and how easy he is with playing with those around him, almost near his own halfway line. I never quite felt the same level of comfort with Darwin. Never felt like that was his natural game. That's not what he wanted to be. He wanted to be running down lines, running at people, running beyond people if possible. Looking at the goal, that sort of thing. Whereas Ekitike back to goal just felt more natural.
And just dribbling. You know, like there's nuance to his dribble. He wants to carry the ball. Well, no, 100%. I compared him the other week to Freddie Canute, and that's not like the most like extravagant link or whatever, but I mean that like rangy style, long leg, gangly, but great control, brilliant on the football, really creative, but maybe not like that. Just not that predatory goal scorer, although he scored loads of goals at Sevilla in the end. But he's got that to him, and that again, the one that leads to the cutback. He's dropping the shoulder. He's he's getting past people. There's the one where he kind of holds it up. Is it a different one? But he holds it up on the left wing, gets knocked from behind, and then he gets fouled on the edge of the penalty area, doesn't he? Those are the kind of things, Ben, that don't feel like someone just winging it. You know, it feels like it's under his control.
I mean, being a really great centre forward is all about intelligence, and I just don't feel like that's my problem with Darwin. I just don't feel like he has quite enough of that, and I totally know what you mean when it comes to Darwin in terms of maybe wanting him to have this chance with some of these other players that we brought in and things like that. But maybe if we were like a year less on Darwin, I would be a lot more open to that. But after 3 years, I just can't bring myself to go for that again, because if we get to Christmas and it's the same outcome, I'm like, fucking knew we should have just got rid of him, and that's the problem.
That's what
I think. But I put a case to you. If Liverpool can't get Isak over the line, would you keep Darwin round for another season?
And there's no alternative to Isak.
Well, what would the alternative be? Is almost maybe that's a side part.
I think now, yes. I think after what happened to Jota, yes, because I think Jota would have been that body, and now he's not here. So I think that does potentially have an implication, depending on what happens with Isak over the next few weeks, over whether or not you keep Darwin. I think if you still had Jota, then I think Darwin would have pretty much been gone by now, probably. But all that had to be held up, and now you've got a situation where, of course, if you can bring in the best striker in the Premier League right now, definitely. But if not, you're probably going to be one short if you move on Darwin as well. So very possibly, but I don't think any of us would choose that.
Because when you look at what his skill set is, he'll score goals for Liverpool if he plays for another season for us. And maybe there's a lower expectation because of what you said, because we're so deep on Darwin that we know what we're getting now, and it's not as though he needs to go and be Liverpool's main man. No. Ekitike would be the one that you're going for, and he becomes a bit of a break glass. Just lump some balls over the top, stick some balls into the box, and let him have a go. You know,
whilst we'd be low on options with that circumstance to play out in the way that you suggested, but I just think I'd like to explore different alternatives instead of keeping Darwin. Because again, I think I've seen Darwin Núñez play for Liverpool now, and I don't think Arne Slot is anything like sold or convinced that he can be the centre forward that he wants, because goals are one thing, but the 10 to 15 goals that he may well contribute does not make up for what he lacks in terms of what he brings to the overall team and how we play and the balance. Or so, whatever the thing you can see of what we just touched upon there, Ekitike, immediately he's been at the club for 2 weeks and he seems to be able to play more of the way that Arne Slot wants as a centre forward than Darwin Núñez ever could. Yeah,
it's just one of those, because again, we don't know what the alternative is. We're not linked with any other strikers. No. It's Isak or nothing. He's been very heavily linked away. We'll discuss that in part 2, the Al Hilal links for Darwin. The only other player who's really being linked in the forward line is Rodrigo, and that's another guy who's more versatile than anything else. You know, he can do a bit centre forward, but and then we've already talked about Rio Ngumoha maybe getting this chance, more chances on the left. Yeah. If you buy a Rodrigo because you can't get an Isak, you might be closing a bit more of the door on Rio's opportunities on the left hand side potentially.
I think Rodrigo would be like a major Chiesa upgrade.
Yeah.
To be honest, in terms of being able to play across the front line. And we don't know what's going to happen with Chiesa yet, but I would still be shocked if he was a Liverpool player coming in the window. That really would surprise me. But yeah, I do think it'd be left heavy in terms of him, what we're bringing him in to do in terms of his role, but there's nothing saying that he can't play on the right and centre forward as well.
Yeah, okay. But people at home let us know, if Isak doesn't materialise, would you be happy to keep Darwin round? And obviously, as I say, if yes or no, feel free to do some of the workings out in the comments as well, because who would you need to bring in? Because if you say to me we're missing out on Isak and selling Darwin Núñez, well, that we're all of a sudden a bit light, in terms of what we need for the campaign. But encouraging on Ekitike so far anyway. I think I love Jeremy Frimpong.
Okay.
I of all the people who stood out to me in that game of football. And it was lovely seeing Vert, it was lovely seeing Salah back and everyone looking resplendent in the Addy kits. Great stuff. I have now spent, prior to this, 7, 8 years of watching Trent Alexander-Arnold play right back and Joe Gomez play right back and countless others over the years beforehand. There's a couple of moments with Frimpong. There was one where he was about the halfway line and he had two guys on him and he just went left and he went right and he just skinned this guy and he ran down the wing and I was like, holy shit, I've not seen a right back do that for Liverpool. I've seen wingers do that for Liverpool, but I've not seen a guy who's nominally our right back. And there was another moment, I think in the second half, where something broke down and he ran back and he was in position like an absolute flash. And I went like, oh, and it's his enthusiasm. We know he's got that natural enthusiasm in person as well, Dan. You've interviewed him already. But his ability to get up the pitch and stuff, he's different to Conor Bradley. I don't think he's as gnarly as Bradley is, which sounds like I'm making Bradley sound like he's an absolute clogger of football. I'm not. But he's very fleet of foot and he's very exciting. And at that pace, I've got a sneaky feeling we're going to end the ball loving Jeremy Frimpong.
No, absolutely. I agree. It's hard not to straight away, isn't it? Because he has just got, as you say, that infectious enthusiasm right from the get-go. And yeah, the recovery pace is probably his X factor, if you like, you know what I mean? That is what makes him so sort of special and unique, because whilst he is so attack-minded and most of the work he wants to be doing is forward-facing, is beating people, making people look stupid, backs himself 110% when it comes to that, by the way. Every time he gets into any sort of difficult situation with defenders converging on him, he just goes at people. But no, I think the one you're referencing there, I remember a little bit of skill and I was sort of like, oh wow, that was nice. But I think it's Nico Williams actually gets back and sort of shepherds away from a dangerous situation, and he's one of the best wingers in world football right now. So yeah, there's a lot to like about the early throws. He maybe hasn't quite got the headlines of some others. There have been some moments whereby I think his end product in the final deliveries left a little bit to be desired, if I'm being brutally honest. He had a couple of shots from range as well, which have also not exactly filled me with huge optimism we're going to get a goal scoring right back necessarily. But yeah, I think it's been encouraging from him, and let's be brutally honest about it, like Conor Bradley's picked up another injury. So if he's not careful, Jamie Frimpong might just find himself as our right back, because that shirt was one that I felt was really somewhat 50-50 and up for grabs. I think Conor Bradley's been impressive whenever he's been asked, and including in pre-season. Likewise, Frimpong's obviously the big money new signing. Conor Bradley's not likely to give it up easily. So I was like, oh, this is going to be fascinating to see which way it goes. Timing's everything, isn't it? Yeah, Bradley gets injured, Frimpong plays well again. So yeah, we'll wait and see. But I think the early signs are really, really good.
He just seems tireless. He's fast, he's tireless, he's skillful. I was wondering, because a lot of people were saying, oh, maybe he'll be there to cover Salah on the right-hand side. And I was like, nah, no chance. It's just, we buy players for certain positions, and yet he's done that already. And actually, even when Salah's on the pitch, he's playing as a right winger as well, Ben. Maybe he's a volume player, but I don't know. I forget, because we've obviously watched Trent come up and we've watched Bradley come up. Bought this guy from Bayer Leverkusen, who's got invincible in the Bundesliga. He's got Champions League experience. He's played in now three different countries. This will be his third of playing at senior football. We've not bought a kid here. We've actually bought a senior player who's ready for action.
Yeah, and obviously just because his price tag was more than reasonable as well doesn't mean that diminishes his quality any further. Obviously we've done well and gone and get ourselves what it's looking like a bit of a bargain. The talk all of last season, and particularly through like this calendar year, as it was becoming more and more obvious that Trent was leaving, was you're never going to directly replace Trent. You're never going to go out and buy a right back with the same skill set. So the team's going to have to change, the setup's going to have to change to get that creativity, and that's what the manager's done by going signing other players in other areas of the pitch. So it's now just going to be interesting. It's going to be an adventure for all of us to watch how, when we've become so used to watching a certain profile of player at right back for like 8 years, how the tactical approach is going to be different in that position going forward. And this is it felt very much like a new era yesterday with the new kit and with the Adidas all over the ground. It felt this is now a different mode of Liverpool that we've kind of been through the transition in that first year, won the league, great, but now we're going to see a separate set of players. And the same with Kirkes, he does look a little bit like an Andy Robertson regen, but there are elements to his game that are different. Yeah. And when we've come so used to watching those two fullbacks for years and years and years, it's just going to be interesting to see how Frimpong is instructed and how that position is approached, because the creativity now, in terms of the end product, maybe, is going to come from different areas of the pitch, and that's fine, And it's more conventional.
Well, exactly. It's funny to say that it's more conventional because of how unconventional our experience of right backs has been with Trent. But there is, it can go back to the recovery pace. There's just going to be a moment where Ibu Kanate is going to go, God, that's broken down over on the right hand side. Right, all hands to battle. Say, all right, Jeremy. Okay, yeah, cool. We're good to defend now, boss. Well, that's great. I'm pleased, really pleased to see him settling in so well. And it is, I agree. The Kerkez stuff, you can squint and see Andy Robertson when Kerkez is playing. A younger Robbie Robertson with a little bit more of a spring in his step or whatever. Whereas, Frimpong is totally different. Totally different to what we've seen. Great. Anything else you want to pick out from these before we move on?
I mean, Florian.
We
haven't had a Florian chat yet. He was exquisite, wasn't he? Let's be honest.
Exquisite.
He was, though. He's just an absolute pleasure.
He is? He's that, it's all relative, obviously, but we've all played with that fella at five-a-side who, the ball will just bounce in his favour all the time. They're that good. It looks like an accident, and they'll bumble through, and then, for God's sake, they've still got the ball. How do they keep hold of it? He is that guy, but at international level of football. He's just, everything he does comes off pretty much. Sometimes it looks intentional, sometimes it looks unintentional. It's spontaneity, it's adaptability whenever he's on the ball, and it's just so exciting to watch. I've never Torres came through and Alonso little bit before my time in terms of really paying attention to the game. Obviously I remember them playing for Liverpool. I think this is the first time, maybe since Suarez, but I would say even more so, I've never been so sure that a player is going to be a success at Liverpool. Within the small amount of time that I've seen, it's just instantly I'm like, this guy's going to be great.
So I remember, and it's obviously a different position, of course, but to Fernando Torres, so obviously we played Chelsea at Anfield, first game of the season, that one, and I think it's Tal Ben-Aimi absolutely just smokes him, and he goes through, and I'm thinking, yep, there you go, that's it. I watched it happen in front of me, the check, all checks complete, we got to play it here or not? Oh my God, we actually have. Because so many of those lads we bought, our big headline signing of the summer, and then it just wouldn't quite work, and you're waiting for it to click for them. And look, we've not played a competitive game of footy yet, so that's still to come for them. But I have been burned many times before, but I could easily foresee a world where Wirtz takes the league by storm, because that's how good he is.
It feels like, and it feels almost like there is an element of imposter syndrome there, even though we're the biggest club in the country and we're the most successful team in the country. But it just feels like we shouldn't have him. It feels like he should have just gone to City and replaced De Bruyne.
100%. We don't do that sort of thing.
We don't do this.
Yeah, I agree.
And Thiago was the kind of last time we did this, but that was a completely different transfer in terms of the financials involved and the stage of the career that the player was at. This is just he should be wearing light blue in my head because that's what City do. But
15 years ago, he'd have signed for Chelsea. Absolutely.
We wouldn't have had a sniff.
No,
but that's where we are.
That's where we are as a club, and that's due to so many individuals that have set us in this place now and to where we are today.
That feels like that feels like, I mean, it was a statement signing, and if he continues his progression, then it will help to cement Liverpool where they are as well.
It would be mad if he's not the biggest. It would be mad if he's not the biggest.
He might not be the marquee signing, which is frightening.
That is a potential at this stage.
Liverpool might have another one.
That's what I mean. We are in dreamland. We are in dreamland with this.
I've been coining it the Galactico summer if that drops in, and that if you remember that, maybe a little bit before your time, but the Kaka signing, everyone going, Kaka signing, wow, that is, stop the clocks, everyone, this is the biggest signing in football, and then he just went, and Benzema, and Ronaldo, right, okay, but what about Kaka? Exciting, very, very exciting, love him, I can't wait to see.
But he had a good game. Actually, at the back. That was our only recognised centre-half available to us now.
That was a glaringly obvious thing, I thought you'd say, particularly in the first game. Look, obviously, Naoni did quite well, but I didn't feel like, I felt it was pretty glaringly obvious that, for all this excitement around Isak and the attacking options, please
laid bare by that.
Please sign centre-back.
Well, that will wonderfully tee us up for the first part of part two. So we will take a very short break, and when we return, we'll be discussing transfers. We'll be discussing Liverpool's quite pressing need for a centre half, it appears. More on Darwin Núñez to Al Hilal, and of course Alexander Isak chat. So stay with us.
Hey everyone, how would you like to win this? Hold it up for them, Errol. This is a Liverpool shirt signed by two icons of the football club, Steve McMahon and Ronnie Whelan. Medals and trophies galore. At the end of August, we'll be giving that shirt away to one of our Redmen Plus Legend subscribers. If you want to be in the draw to win that, and every single month we do these sign competitions as well, head on over to redmenplus.com, become a Legend subscriber, you'll be in the draw. If you are one of our Captain subscribers, simply upgrade your account, become a Legend, and at the end of August, Errol, someone will be winning what is an absolute beauty, isn't it?
Yeah, we love this.
redmenplus.com, become a Legend.
Hey, welcome back. I wasn't looking at my phone. It's fine. Yes, in part 2, we're going to be discussing transfer stuff, so we might as well dive into it. I've still got Ben Kelly and Dan Clubb alongside me for this one. Centre-back thing, Ben. Yeah. We've seen throughout pre-season, Gravenberch, Endo, Tsimikas, Robertson, Nione and Stevenson all used at centre-half. Joe Gomez is injured again. Please, just don't drag yourself into the fucking shite that comes with people being injured. He's a good guy. No one wants to be injured. It is really unlucky for Gomez again. Virgil missing at the weekend, which would be a much bigger problem. Kwanzaa sold. I feel like we've made a problem for ourselves here, and the people who are in control of transfers for Liverpool are not stupid. Yeah. They'll be well aware of what they've done. It will not have escaped attention that Trey Naoni was playing centre-back for us in a game of football yesterday. But yeah, Charity Shield's at the weekend.
Yeah.
The league starts the week after. If Ibu and Virgil are fit, then it's not an immediate issue. But if either of them pick up an injury, then Endo's starting in the first game of the season. That kind of thing.
Significantly little of those players you just read out are actually centre backs, and they're the one. That's the problem. Yeah. And obviously,
in fact, almost exclusively.
Not centre backs. And look, yeah, you're right. As long as the main two are fit, you can argue. But as we know, life is never that simple. And Ibu's kind of injury form, if you like, has improved over the last couple of years. When he first got here, he was a little bit more injury prone than he is now. Touch wood. And obviously Virgil, despite his injury quite a few years ago, has always been available. But that can change at any time. Everybody's getting older, and as much. And I do wonder actually at the moment if it's contributing to a lack of sales at left back, because are they looking at it? Because I'm wondering why we've still got 3 senior left backs on the books. I thought Tsimikas would have gone by now, but it's interesting that he chose to play Robertson at centre back yesterday and not Tsimikas. He put Tsimikas in the left back position. So is he actually genuinely having a look at Robertson at centre back? Because I don't think he's fast enough, and I don't think he's tall enough to do that. But maybe with the fact that he plays as part of the back 3 for Scotland and he's got that little bit more experience to do that, maybe he's seen as an option. But the headline here is, I'm hoping that basically the reason that we're still talking about this is because Liverpool, as they've said over the last few years, that they want to be opportunistic in the market, and now potentially this opportunity to sign Alexander Isak has emerged, and that's what is taking up all the noise. Yeah. And I'm hoping that somebody else in Liverpool's transfer office somewhere, who's not on all the Isak stuff, a little intern, is going, actually we should still be looking at centre backs as well, and that is still being taken care of away from the noise of everything else.
Has to be.
Yeah. It's we've been here before, where we've gone into a season and we've got, didn't sign a left back, and James Milner played left back all season, and he was really good, to be fair. And we've had other situations. The worst one, of course, was we need another centre half. It's okay because Fabinho can cover at centre half if we need, and then all the centre halves got injured. And we could have bought another one and we still would have been shut, and they would have got fucking injured anyway, because that was the way that season went. But yeah. It's the thing, it's the elephant in the room in terms of everything. It's the thing that threatens to spoil what's been a great summer so far. And look, I would reiterate, there's plenty of time to get this one sorted, and I'd rather us get it sorted right, because I just don't see a world where you sell Jarell Quansah if what you're getting in isn't at least as good as Jarell Quansah, because if it's not, what was the fucking point of selling him?
Yeah, exactly. And it comes back to your sort of original point right at the top, but the people in charge of this sort of thing are far too smart, they're far too intelligent, and they're far too experienced. Eyes. Yeah, ultimately.
Counts.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you'd like to think they're well in control of all of this sort of stuff. And the Isak thing, maybe just sort of, from our perspective, is just taking up all the headlines and all the noise around transfers. And inside Liverpool, they are very much focused on getting a centre half. And there was I think Paul Joyce suggested a name late last night that Liverpool have been looking at, young lad from Italy, from Parma. So there are still names doing the rounds. Obviously, the Mark Gahey thing hasn't really gone away. I think we are playing some of a waiting game for that and almost backing Palace into a little bit of a corner. Saying at some point you are going to have to sell this lad to us. So we are just sort of holding out on a price there because, yeah, it's absolutely imperative that we go and do it. We are in dreamland. We are sort of beyond our wildest dreams summer when we get Isak. If we do get Isak, I'm convinced we will, for what it's worth, just to sort of lay that bare right now. But yeah, the centre-back thing cannot be overlooked. Absolutely. Robertson, there might be a school of thought in Liverpool that he's okay there. I'm not convinced at all by it. He's got the experience, yes, but he doesn't tick anywhere near enough of the
he was
boxes.
our fifth choice centre half, and you get to keep him for another season, and he'll do bits at left back for you. I've got no problem with that. But right now, he's our third choice centre half.
Fourth, maybe, if you count Endo. Maybe. To put Endo ahead of him, but even then, still, I'm not, it's not great. So.
But again, Quansah was age profile. Quansah was the buffer between, and we had this discussion when it comes League Cup team predictions last season. Quansah was the younger, but the more experienced one you could drop in. Below him, you go to Marinallo and Wellesley Lucky. And for what it's worth, I thought Lucky had a decent game last night when he came on, but that's too big a drop off. Yeah. You can't even count them as options right now. They need loans or more than 21s footy or whatever. Liverpool, I think they need two. Actually, I don't think one's anywhere near enough, because to come back to Gomez, as unfortunate as it is, and as sorry for him as I may well feel, he's not really a viable option. I don't think, and there's two or more seasons worth of evidence now to prove that, So I think two are absolutely essential. One, probably Mark Gahey, and one more in Joel Quansah's age range.
Yeah, I mean, the Endo stuff is interesting because you can't see well when he gets any minutes in midfield, other than if we're clearing the side out and putting a bunch of completely different players in for a cup game, you would definitely chuck him in.
He'll play those games.
But again, at the moment, he's playing centre half in them games. That's that's the reality of where we're at with stuff. So maybe Endo is in greater consideration for the centre back thing, but I don't know whether he's good enough to do it. That again goes back to it. It's a sort of Damocles hanging over the quality of our squad a little bit. That I liked him when I enjoyed his performance. I actually enjoyed him more when he went back into midfield. To be honest, later on in the second game, but he might be fine. But again, that is a fifth choice act of what have we got there? Oh, well, it'd be all right because we've got him. Not.
That's not strong enough. We said before, Stefan Bajcetic isn't really likely to be in the reckoning in any way, shape or form, and I think partly because of injury, partly because of his interest. I think Celtic are keen right now. Tyler Morton, as we speak, is on the brink of joining Lyon, so there's 6 options gone. Therefore, they probably was above them in the pecking order anyway. But immediately, you need him to be the 6 on those occasions. When we talk about these League Cup games where you might throw him into centre-back, you probably want him to be a 6 in them instead. So you are so short and so limited in what you've got at the back. And you want to win those games. You know what I'm like. But I want to win all the games of footy if we possibly can help it. Yeah. There'll be certain ones whereby you are limited, you are sort of a bit hamstrung by what you can do. But we've got time left in the window, money to spend seemingly, more money coming in as it goes. There is opportunity here for Liverpool to build a squad capable of going for all of them. The attacking department, you'd say, is there or thereabouts. Still some things to happen there. Midfield, I think, is boxed. Maybe one to leave, potentially, we've discussed. But the back looks really, really short right now, and that isn't smart from Liverpool.
I mean, literally as well.
Literally, yeah.
Everyone we're playing in that back four is 6 foot. It's 5'6" or
I mean, Trey is the opposite. I adore Trey Newman. He's a wonderfully gifted footballer, but he's the opposite of a centre-half. As footballers go, he may as well be a number 9. You know what I mean? He's just not that.
And I think there is something, and we can't know. We're not getting the full picture, and then ultimately the full picture then doesn't even really materialise until you've played half a season of football as well. Anyway, which is why it becomes. I always find it's a lot of wasted energy to get really angry about these things, because managers make decisions and then they have to live by them. That's what they get paid for. But there is something to a versatility thing where I think we will see more of Gravenberch at centre-half during the season. It was a break glass thing, but I think that will be a stylistic shift to get more attacking players on the pitch throughout games. So I could see And Naoni is just doing that,
Yeah,
and he's got the physique, he's got the height for it, and that kind of stuff, and he's got the skill on the ball. I don't think he is a centre-half, by the way, but so the minutes might not be quite pressing in some ways, and then again, Endo potentially becomes a thing in there. I think he'd be better at centre-half than he would be in a centre midfield, because I think when you're now making Dom Szoboszlai in that pecking order, he starts to stand out even more. His skill set being so wildly different. Everyone drops back a line when they're not quite good enough to play in the position that was considered their own. I think we'll see where Wirtz will play off the left or play in different positions. Versatility, cool. But as I'm saying this, I'm not saying this is the answer. I'm saying these are like by choice decisions you make through a season, not your Gravenberch's now playing 30 games at centre half of Liverpool.
There's in-house mend and make do's and sort of sticky plasters Liverpool
and
own.
20 minutes in a football match when you're trying to
we
change
own them.
things.
I think Gravenberch is one of them, as you mentioned there. We saw some of them yesterday, really. But in terms of, again, I come back to my point a moment ago, Liverpool have money, Liverpool have time, Liverpool have gold standard recruitment people. I just think it would be remiss of Liverpool not to go into the market and fix the ailments that we currently have, and they are at the back.
Yeah, well, that was the problem with the season that you mentioned before, Paul. It wasn't just all the injuries that we had at centre back in that COVID year. It was the fact that then Henderson and Fabinho were playing at centre back, and then that takes away from your midfield. That's why Liverpool was so bad that year, because they didn't have a midfield either. They'd run out centre backs, so therefore they didn't have a midfield. And then everybody
saw that when Phillips and Williams,
and then they got injured.
Fabinho goes into his DM, and all of a sudden we seem like we can play football again. You know what I mean? Because you get somebody else who's actually a specialist in the role. So it'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something to be done, and nothing I think to panic about as such. But it can't not mention it. It's there. It's there for all to see, and no one has particularly. Again, I'm not against the idea of Endo wants to stay. I think he's a good influence to have around the squad, and he'll have to get minutes somewhere. And by the same notion, I'm not dead set against Robertson being in the mix for it. But right now, we are one injury away from them being in the first 11 for a team that's trying to win everything, and that's a world of difference.
What I will say about Endo is, can you name me a time where Endo played badly for Liverpool?
No.
You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that, but I feel like, given the way that the forward situation has changed so much over the summer, up until even right now, and that has obviously been the priority, if we sign Mark Gahey, and Endo was the quote-unquote fourth choice, notwithstanding Gomez, but it's difficult to factor in him sometimes. I think I would be okay with that, given the rest of the additions that we brought in elsewhere. We've just talked a little bit about how suddenly we've got an extra midfield option deeper because Szoboszlai is dropping in. We've just talked about that. So I'm like, but I can't think of a time that Endo's come on and not done what's asked of him, or come on and had a shocker. So that's not to say that I want him playing 10, 20 games at centre half this season.
Etihad away, Endo playing centre half.
But I just don't know. I don't know, in the games that you would need him to fill in that position, I think I'm kind of okay with that, because I think that's kind of what he does.
But it goes back, we were talking about City's versatility earlier on in the podcast, and how we get obsessed with depth charts, and now it's got to be 2 or 3 for every position, and Man City just never do that. We all think they do, but they don't. Phil Foden is always, and Kevin De Bruyne, and again Bernardo Silva were first or second choice in about 3 or 4 positions. That's the way that they kind of work things, and we might be leaning a bit towards that. But I do think we just need one more. We desperately need one more centre half, and I think I could see how a manager might go, I've got these lads here who are going to need some minutes, I want to keep them around. Endo's your fourth choice. I think that would be okay, let's say if we've got Van Dijk, Konate, Gahey, Gomez, Endo as the centre halves, it's probably an upgrade on what we had last.
Yeah, because Gay's better than Quansah.
Yeah, agreed.
But you don't know what you're going to get out of Gomez.
Yeah.
Well, I think at this point, and this is going to sound horrendous, so bear with me, I'm sorry. I think you have to prepare for the worst with Joe Gomez, and what you're going to get is very little.
Yeah.
Because as we sit here right now, he's currently injured. Yeah. So and I love Joe Gomez. I think he's an exceptional footballer on his day, and he's been an exceptional footballer for Liverpool. But we are off the back of a season whereby he didn't really get going at all, missed a large chunk of it again for injury, and he's missed all of pre-season, give or take, for injury again. So we have to be realistic about it.
He's not getting any less injured, is he?
No.
You know what I mean? Like he's always had these problems, and like I mentioned with Konate before, I really don't want to speak this into existence, but Konate was picking up in his first couple of seasons. He was more of that mould, wasn't he? He was like, oh, Konate again, you know. And he seems to have ironed that out, really. Like for now, like last season, he was available.
Well, Slot and his team are supposed to be these injury prevention specialists. But so far, it hasn't worked for Joe. It hasn't worked for Joe Gomez.
And again, I feel bad saying it.
Yeah,
but it is the truth.
There's no need to be honourable about it. When no one you're not. No one is. And,
no,
you know, people shouldn't be because again, he doesn't want it to be that way. But being cold and looking at the Liverpool squad, that's an issue. That's an issue. Yeah, we've sold the centre half, and Gomez hasn't come back to fitness. So we are going into the season right now 2 centre halves less than we had this time last year. Yeah, because they both started the season fit.
And albeit only Van Dijk was ill last night, it doesn't half make you go, oh wow, you know what I mean? It's really quite frightening.
Yep. Anyway, let's move away from that before we get too scared. Al Hilal, we talked about Darwin in part 1, but yeah, they've made him their top priority. Cool. I do wonder, Dan, whether this, as I kind of touched upon before, and maybe you have said a bit with the left-back situation, where Liverpool just kind of want to get this to a stage where it is just a button press away, but then get the Isak stuff. So basically, you're pressing, you're twisting the keys at the same time, basically, and unlocking these transfers.
Yeah, that would be the smart play, I think. That's certainly how it feels as well from the outside looking in. I think the Darwin situation, obviously, with Napoli were disabled a few weeks ago, they were never likely to really stump up the cash that Liverpool would sort of say yes to, or Liverpool would agree to. Milan.
Fucking Serie A teams, man. They're all like loan with an option to buy. And you're like, no, buy. Loan with an option to buy. No, buy.
The structure of that deal, I dread to see it. But yeah, whereas I do feel Liverpool have always been holding out for Saudi. And the interest was there in January in him and hasn't really gone away. And I think Darwin's relatively open and sort of keen on the idea of that move as well. So I think for all parties, to come back to our previous Darwin Núñez conversation, I think it is best for all parties it moves on. Now, I think a little bit of him might fancy sticking around in Europe and sort of proving some of the naysayers wrong, actually, and silencing some of his critics and showing that he was or is of the quality required. But yeah, I don't see it. I do think, as you've touched upon there, when this does indeed happen, Liverpool would then act quickly on the other one.
Darwin to be playing in the Turkish league by 2027.
Him and Osherman up front.
That's the well-trodden path, isn't it?
Yeah.
John Durand done the same.
John Durand did the same.
Mourinho, Fenerbahce. Give him a run there. That'll do. I think the problem with the Núñez and the Isak, I'm sure we're going to talk about all of it, is that we seem to be stuck. Somebody said on Twitter the other day in a bit of a housing chain where like we're waiting on Newcastle, and obviously Šeško's the main one at the moment, but like for example they've been linked with Visser, but then like Brentford were like, well, we're not moving Visser on until we find a replacement. And it's all like we're at the top of the chain, like wanting to buy £150 million Alexander Isak and move on our guy, but we can't do any of that until everybody else gets their house in order. And it just seems like there was a time last week when I thought Isak starting in the Community Shield. Like, I was so convinced. But now, like, the more this goes on, nothing to do with us, we're ready to go. But like, the more this goes on, the more I think it's going to clearly take time for all the other clubs to get what they want sorted. And because we're the biggest fish in the chain, if you like, or like
to mix metaphors,
we're top of the because we're the top of the food chain. We're probably going to be the last to be fed. Yes, there's the saying.
Which is technically not how the food chain works, but yeah, I understand.
No, but in this case, it probably does.
No, I think that's right, and I thought it was telling that I think Liverpool are confident they'll get Darwin out the door if they really want to, Dan, because it looks like Diaz and him are the ones that are funding this Isak bid effectively. And once Diaz was out the door, it was like, right, Liverpool clearly made that move on the understanding that this is good. This will drop in. We're on the pathway towards it, but it wasn't going to be maybe quite as straightforward as the bid goes in and it gets accepted. Yeah,
Liverpool have played it well from the outset, really. I think when it comes to Diaz as well, because a lot of obviously the noise coming out of Liverpool was that he wasn't for sale unless sort of a certain price was met, and then all of a sudden that price wasn't met, and off he went. So I do think Liverpool have been well ahead, one step ahead of this entire thing, and I think the same could be said for Darwin. I think the point about sort of holding out for when the time is right on Darwin makes sense too, and I think we are getting towards that sort of moment right now. Obviously with Newcastle rather heading towards Tesco, United are at the table now for him, for what it's worth. But yeah, I think Liverpool again, we're right to keep Darwin around for as long as we have, but now even last night being done and dusted, it feels as though, because a lot of the talk last week was that things will start moving when we get back from tour, but now the doubleheader's done. I think the time, who benefits now from Darwin playing many more games for Liverpool? I'm not sure anyone does.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move things on to the Isak stuff and just kind of catch up where we're at with it, really. Most people will be familiar with this because you've all been refreshing Twitter endlessly for the last couple of weeks on this, but I thought it was interesting, the approach, really, and to echo what Dan said, really, Ben, I think Liverpool have played it really well. They've lent into him and Newcastle without being too twattish about it, but just enough. Like, we're not quite into Real Madrid territory or Barcelona territory just yet, but it is edging towards that kind of situation.
Yeah, I think out of the two clubs, we're the ones that have handled ourselves with the most decorum up until this point. I mean, after the bid last week being rejected and those stories coming out about how we've bottled it and how we've unsettled the player all from the Newcastle end, I thought, really? Come on, have some... Clearly the player wants to go. That's the problem. And if I'm Eddie Howe, and I quite like Eddie Howe, and I respect what he's doing at Newcastle, I kind of don't care how good your player is. If you've got a player who doesn't want to be there, they're trying to kick on this season. They've got a lot of football to play as well. They've got another crack at the Champions League for the second time in 2 seasons, which I get. You want your number one striker to be a part of, but deep down, if he doesn't want to be there and you're being offered effectively you're going to be offered £130 million to reinvest, because, by the way, Newcastle are struggling in some other areas of the pitch. They've basically got no midfielders, right? So they need that money to go and reinvest in other areas. I can understand now, and it seems like the messaging's starting to change, that Newcastle have come to the acceptance that it's the right thing to do, and that depends on who they can get through the door. But yeah,
I like the way that we obviously rang them up and went 120. What do you think? And they went, we're not really sure. And then we went with a bid of 110, and it kind of said, it was just, it's just, because I've said it before, I'm obsessed with the trading scene in Moneyball. Like, if being on phone calls and getting people on and like playing one off the other. I love the idea of that, of going, because we're interested in 120, but we are actually going to offer you 110 plus add-ons, which by all accounts probably add up to 120 anyway. But it does say that it's Liverpool saying we're dead interested, the guy wants us, but we're also not just going to fork endless sums of money over, because you would have thought that having said 120 and them said no, Liverpool's first proper bid should have been above 120. But I like the fact that they've kind of spelled out their intentions.
So they can say, obviously the footballer wants to leave. That's the thing. They go, well, either this or... And whether there's a world where, in a way, Newcastle can squeeze it. They just kind of need to get to the end of the month, and then he's a Newcastle player still. And whether there's a world where they Coutinho it and we Van Dijk it, and by January 1st he's holding up a Liverpool shirt by a Christmas tree, because that might be the kind of worst case scenario for us here. But I'm coming around to your way of thinking, Dan. I've got no doubt in my mind that Alexander Isak player is a Liverpool player at some point in the near future, or not too far distant future.
I just think too much water's gone under the bridge now, and I think there's a general acceptance from Newcastle, the fan base, and Newcastle, the football club, that this move probably needs to happen. I think Isak has made it so abundantly clear that he's desperate to get out of Newcastle, and that sounds really, really negative towards Newcastle. I don't think I mean it like that. I mean, they've got Champions League football, great. This fella wants to win the Champions League. This fella's good enough to win. You know what I mean?
My sort of, I agree on that, and because I think the Coutinho point is excellent, to be honest, because actually there was a value in Liverpool digging their heels in over Coutinho. Because if we just gone, then you tell the world that we can be bullied into selling players. But actually, we hung on for 6 months, got even more money, got a brilliant half a season out of Coutinho in the process as well, and then got the Van Dijk stuff sorted, and ultimately, as we well know, meant we could afford Alisson when it came round to it in the summer. It worked out perfectly for Liverpool, and there is a world where Newcastle could do something similar. There might be a value to that. However, I don't know, because I'm about to say they don't feel like a team that can challenge. Well, Liverpool had got back into the Champions League for the first season, that season, and we got to the final. So it is absolutely possible to jump there. But Isak just feels like he's gotten too good too quickly for them. And that's the perils of where they're at a little bit. They were great scenes in the League Cup final for them, not for us, for them, and it was a brilliant moment. But he needs to be in a team that wins the
Well, it gave him a taste that sort of thing, didn't it? It might have been to their detriment, because it made him go, well, actually, I quite enjoyed this. I want to do much more with this with bigger, more shiny silverware. Yeah. And where can you do that? Liverpool.
And he's probably seen some of the moves that Liverpool have made in the window as well. I mean, look, this is going to sound ridiculous now, but towards the back end of last season, if you cast your mind back to exactly how it was when the season ended, before any of this summer had taken place, it felt like actually going into this season, the league could be quite open. Newcastle had ended the season really well. I'm not saying that Newcastle were going to, but it wouldn't, like exactly how things wouldn't have surprised me going Newcastle if they make one or two good signings and they kept hold of Isak. Actually, could they mount a title challenge? Because City have fallen away and Arsenal aren't quite there, and Liverpool have got some aging players and they need to make some signings. Now that the landscape's totally different, Liverpool have just basically put all the cards down the table, signed everybody, and been like, yeah, we're the strong favourites now to win the league. And if you're Isak at his age and his quality and what you want to do with your career, suddenly you want to play for them, and it's that simple.
When you're looking at it going, Arsenal will be up there.
Yeah. City
will bounce back and be up there because they're Manchester City. And Liverpool have basically, whether they are or not, remains to be seen as the football is played. But Liverpool at this stage have told everyone that they're up there as well. So that's like three. That makes it feel, whether it's right or wrong, like the top three is a closed shop. Which, so you've got fourth, and I guess fifth will probably still be up for grabs in terms of Champions League stuff. But like Chelsea just won the Club World Cup, and they're spending big on players as well. So you'd be looking at them going, okay, sound. Man United will hopefully remain shite, so they might not be a consideration. But the point is, it will be competitive, and Newcastle are not going to be a shoo-in. They're fighting for one, maybe two Champions League places. One, who knows, maybe one. I don't understand how it works for the season properly, but it will be a scrap to be a top four side on the cards, likely for them, with some great adventures along the way. Careers are short. Again, we've been there. We've seen players. It's just not the right development time for them to be at that.
No, we are overwhelming favourites for a lot of things next season, I think it's fair to say. But you just said it there. Eddie Howe said one of the more telling comments recently, about 2-3 weeks ago now, about a short career. He came out with that early doors in the Alexander Isak saga, and you made me almost go, why is he using that terminology? Like, what's been sort of...
No, football careers are long. Stay in everyone until it comes good, is what he should be saying.
Yeah, who said something to him that makes him therefore sit in front of a press conference and go, well, careers are short, so I'm basically not surprised that Isak's being linked away. That made me go, okay, there's definitely legs to this. And again, I'll come back to my point a moment ago. Obviously, the aspirations and the ambitions of Silva is one thing. There's contract situations at play. He hasn't been given a new contract or the new sort of the salary that he might have wanted at Newcastle. But like, I just think, given the fact he went away to train on his own, didn't go on tour, the Celtic stuff the other week, there's too much happened to even try and reintegrate him into that squad. It's not going to be a happy working place.
Eddie Howe's saying things like, you have to earn the right to train with us, and that feels like you start to see the PR machine going through the gears on it, of like, we're the heroes, we're doing the right thing. It's this naughty player who's putting us all over, running us all over hot coals for no reason other than his own selfish ambition. Yeah. But and again, I feel uncomfortable actually us being on the other side of that for a change, but also fascinated to see how it works, because I've seen us fall foul of it. I've seen Barcelona come too many times, and Real Madrid come knocking, and clubs, take players that I don't want us to lose. So, yeah. I mean, the one last point on this is, why is this different from us buying Wirtz? Like, what makes this more difficult? If you get what I mean, because like that, there's a club with probably loftier ambitions for us for this season.
Probably because we're in the same country,
yeah.
And it's. Even though we are the league champions and we're going to be one of the favourites for the Champions League next season, Leverkusen probably still in their league because of Bayern have a little bit of, that's kind of what the smaller, or not smaller, but like it's what the lesser German teams do. They sell the players. Yes. That's kind of what they do. Whereas I think that Newcastle, given where they were, 20, 25 years ago and the size of club that they are, they're a bigger club than Leverkusen, I think. And they will see themselves now on the right trajectory, and we're on the right path here. Yeah. We've got the Champions League. We've got a good set of players. Why would anybody want to leave the northeast? That's kind of how they think and operate. And I don't think that they will take kindly if Isak was going to be bought for 150 billion by Real Madrid. I think maybe the messaging would be different and the fans' attitudes would be different. But I don't think they like the fact that ultimately he wants to go to a stronger club in the same division.
Yeah, it's that. Bayer Leverkusen are historically a club that sells their best and most prized possessions. Newcastle don't want to be that anymore. They want to be the destination. They are this project. They want to be competing at the top end of absolutely everything. They're not there yet, ultimately, which is
and they're
why
in that
Isak
weird
wants to
phase,
leave.
aren't they? They're kind of like us, like we saw that 17, 18 Liverpool, really, where we're on the direction of travel is good, but we're not there, and they need their Van Dijk to come in and transform for them, and maybe they're hoping that Isak should have been that, and now they're going to lose him.
Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? I mean, we lost Suarez, Coutinho, Sterling, Emre Can was this as well, who'd been at Liverpool for a few years, and if they were like us, God, yeah, you'd stick out because we're sticking it out. We're going to be here because we're fans. But we believe they would feel the same way. But again, the whole careers are short. They're going to get paid money. They're going to be offered an opportunity to go and win league titles in another country or for another team, and that can be the thing sometimes. Whereas Isak could be like, well, Newcastle might be 2 or 3 years away from winning the league. I could win the league next season with Liverpool. I could win the Champions League next season with Liverpool. And then, but by the time Newcastle are ready to do it, I might have like 2 or 3 major honours under my belt already by that point. So, yeah. There's some questions from people in the comments. Joan Alvizzo, who, Joan, you can't quite see it. If we just go on Dan's cam. Behind Dan's shoulder there are the custom Redmen sneakers that Joan made for us. Nice. Which are very, very cool. I finally remembered to put them on the studio, so thank you so much for them, mate. He says, would you guys want a centre-back or Isak?
Isak. Sorry.
Just done 15 minutes on how totally necessary a centre-half is.
I know.
Don't do everything we've done in the transfer
I want
market.
the shiny, flashy one. That's what I want. Yeah,
you
sorry.
Can't turn down Isak.
You can't turn it down, can you?
Isak, no.
Sorry. Were you expecting more discussion there, Paul?
No, that's fair. No, go on.
You're the same?
No, I'm the same. Defenders.
We'll score more than you.
Honestly, I've had this thought percolating in my head all summer, and I love Virgil van Dijk, and I've loved lots of defenders over the years, but defenders are dickheads. You know why? Because they want football to be less fun.
Yeah,
they want football to be fucking miserable and boring, and they want every game to be basically 0-0 because that's what they've done. That's them doing their job.
True.
And so stop buying centre halves, just buy more strikers.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing it.
Yeah.
You're in luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep doing it. We had a couple of super chats in as well. Veronica just said, thanks for your great videos. Thank you so much for watching and believing that is true. And Ethjamal Hassan says, anyone think that Ekitike reminds you of Firmino? It's the obvious comparison of like a number 9 who's good off, deeper and whatever, but I'm really reticent to start making comparisons because Bobby was like
it's just he's different physically, he's different.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's quite got the grace or the sort of panache. That is also, I think off the ball he'll have the similar sort of level of wants and sort of ability to do the pressing and what have you, but I'm not sure he's quite got the.
It's worth remembering Roberto Firmino was a fucking genius. Okay. Like an actual honest to goodness genius. And I think Vert might have some of that about him. Yeah. And Ekitike might. But like Bobby was just magic. Like he could do things and came up with things that no one else could ever possibly dream of. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay. Lastly then, you've answered the question already, but I'm going to be definitive at this end of the podcast. Okay. Are Liverpool going to get Alexander Isak?
I think they are, yeah.
Yes, absolutely are,
yeah.
I tend to think so too.
Maybe not by Sunday, but I think by the end of the window. I was really hoping he was just going to be like Van Dijk against Everton, just Signs on the Thursday, plays on the Sunday.
Should we do what? Did you see Luke de Jong got announced for Porto?
Porto just walked out
in the kiss.
Romano in the mud.
I think there's a world where it's all purposefully delayed until after the Newcastle-Liverpool game.
No, he'll play for us at St James's Park.
Do you think?
Yeah, he plays for the St James's Park to a rapturous reception.
Would that be? I mean, just from a PR perspective, if he goes on and scores the winning goal, that's less great for Newcastle, but it does give an opportunity for Newcastle to get it all out the system really early doors with that, like get the fans go out and boo him and all that kind of stuff. Puts Eddie Howe in a good
very
light.
Torres at Chelsea,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
type of thing. But I said that was there, but still, yeah.
Oh, we get it, like both battles.
Okay, we are going to do more on Newcastle over on the Bias Transfer podcast because obviously they are looking to bring in Benjamin Sesko, who might be the key that unlocks the Alexander Isak transfer. The big question is like, why would you sign for Man United and not Newcastle? Or so we're going to try and delve into that one because Newcastle have got more issues that we haven't even really touched upon here just yet, and loads of other bits and pieces over on Redmen Plus as well. So come and join us for that show if you want to have a good old natter about the other transfers of the teams around Liverpool who aren't the champions of England. You can come and do that over there. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, listening, subscribing, and do go and enter that Oosh competition, by the way, because literally someone's got to win that car. The car is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. The noise that it makes is just stupid. It's stupid that a car can make a noise that makes you excited, but it does. It is a genuinely real thing. So go head over to oosh.co.uk on Instagram to check it out and click the link in the description underneath for that one as well. Thank you so much. See you on the Bias Transfer Pod. Ta-ra.